Welcome to At Home with the President. I'm Anita Huburn. On this week's program, the President sits down with young people drawn from all across Guyana as he interacts with them about their hopes, dreams, and aspirations for Guyana. Let's have a look.
I'm very happy to welcome you here at State House for us to have this conversation, because I believe that you all are aware that one of the priorities that this government has had is its young people, because we believe that not only the catchword that young people are our future, but it is actually so. And that is why we have been investing heavily in our young people. And this afternoon, you give me an opportunity to hear directly from you, the youth, what are the main issues on your mind. I'm sure I will try to answer all your questions, and I'm sure it will help me too in the future development of our society. I'm very happy to have you here, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Devon Ray. Thank you for talking to us today. My question to you is, what are your priorities for Guyana's youth, and what are your plans in accomplishing those priorities?
Well, as I just said, that our young people are our future, and we therefore have to build and educate them to face the challenges in the modern world that we live in today. It is very clear that if you look around the world, to look at countries that are developed and those that are not developed, you will see that those that are developed are the ones with a higher level of education. And that is why education is a priority in our society. For me, and we have been investing heavily in education in our society. We have achieved universal primary education, and we are very, very close to achieving universal secondary education. Actually, I had hoped that before the end of the 5 years of me in government that this would have been an achievement. But we're very close to it anyhow in the 3 years that we have been in office. And that, I believe, is extremely important to build a strong and educated young workforce in our society, and our whole country will benefit from that.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Cleo. Everybody's been talking about education and how important it is. I would just like to know, what are your plans for us after we gain this education?
Well, education is important because it will help our young people to get better paying jobs, create employment. And an educated person, one can become an entrepreneur, can develop themselves, they can become employable, they will be able to attract a big investment in our country, both local and foreign investment in our society, to take advantage of the high level of education that we have. Just now I mentioned about secondary education, but you will notice also that we have been investing heavily in tertiary education, including technical education. Many, many regions we have established technical institutes because we anticipate that with the coming of hydropower within our society, you know that the opposition cut the one that prevented us from already starting, but I'm convinced that before the end of this year, we will begin the hydropower station at Amila Falls. And that will open huge possibilities to create technical jobs for our young people. Apart from that, Guyana is very close to becoming an oil and gas producing country, another area that will demand a lot of skills. So educating our people now is actually preparing them to be ready to take high-paying technical jobs that our country in the very near future will be providing to its youth and to its people as a whole, for that matter.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Ryan. I'd just like to get a bit more specifics because you see, I myself have recently returned from studying abroad, and just like myself and many other of my colleagues, we're now faced with a challenge of brain drain that Guyana is currently experiencing. So I was just wondering, what are some of your plans to keep the educated community and working people here in Guyana?
Thanks for the question. I think it's a very important one. And you know, it's one that we have been grappling with for some time to try to prevent many of our skills from leaving. But as I mentioned just now, all of these things are connected. With a higher level of education and a higher level of educated people, it is expected that we will attract a lot of the investments here, and therefore people will not have to leave to find some of the jobs to fulfill their full capacity to allow them to develop to their full, so they can have that right here in Guyana. I mentioned to you just now that with a highly educated population, we will be able to go into manufacturing, more technical skills, more educated type of job. The demand for education will become greater and greater. And also as we develop new sectors like the oil and gas sector, that will demand a lot of skills, engineering skills in particular. So I think that what we're doing in educating our population, we're actually creating the conditions to really anchor our people, or they will not want to leave because they will have the more or less the same type of conditions, the same kind of jobs that they will go abroad to get to work. They will have it within their own locality. And I'm sure most people prefer to be at home than to be anywhere else. So yes, I think that by doing all of these things that are, as I said, are connected, because we see education as important, that the first thing, that it will attract investment. Investments are important to creating jobs, high quality jobs, investment also in our infrastructure, like I mentioned, hydropower, also will open greater and greater possibilities for us, and we will be able to retain more and most of the skills that we will be training in the future. So that is what I plan, and that is how I see us retaining the skills, by providing the higher paying jobs right here in Guyana.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Simeon Kisoon. I'm from Grove Housing Scheme. The question is, right, I want to ask you, crime has become a very concern in young people. What is your plan on crime prevention?
Thanks very much for that question. I think it's an important question that we have to deal with. Many of the things that I spoke about before in answer to the other questions just now will also help us in the fight against crime, because an educated workforce with more possibilities of jobs and that in that way will keep a lot of young people away from crimes. With better paying jobs that we hope to create in the near future, that will help in many ways. But that's not the only way we have to fight crime. We have to also fight crime by looking at the policing methods and so forth. You know that we had the anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. That's a bill that we wanted to pass in the National Assembly, and that goes to the heart of fighting crime within the society. Because the international community believes that a lot of the international criminal activity, the money they get from this, ends up financing terrorism. So there's need for us to cooperate. And you know that drugs is one of the big areas where people make a lot of money from. Guyana is not a drug producing country, but because of the pressure that was put by the United States and Colombia, so you have what is called the balloon effect, and we have become kind of a transit point where the criminals are passing through drugs. Therefore, the need for us to collaborate and cooperate with the international community is important. And we are cooperating. We have very good cooperation with the United States, with the United Kingdom, with Canada, with the rest of the Caribbean in fighting this scourge, because we're all in this fight together. And we don't have the markets here. The drugs end up in the United States. So they have an interest in helping us as well in fighting these crimes. So we have been setting up various bodies to fight the crime within the society. The anti-money laundering bill that you heard about, and the correct name of the bill, Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism, is a bill that has its origin from the international community, because it is felt internationally that a lot of the proceeds from international crime finds its way to financing of terrorism. So the idea is to try to bring our legislation up to standard with the rest of the world, so that we can go after the money of the international criminals and at the same time frustrate that money going to finance terrorism in the world. The opposition voted against that bill on 2 occasions. So that is one of because when they vote against that bill, they vote against the Guyanese people, because they know that the international community also feels so strong about this bill, because international terrorism is a big issue. And if a country doesn't pass these legislations, then it can be blacklisted. And when your financial sector is blacklisted, it has a big impact on your whole economy. So the opposition had a choice to make. They had a choice to vote against the criminal and vote with the Guyanese people by passing that bill, or, on the other hand, to vote to protect the criminal. On 2 occasions, they had an opportunity to vote to pass that bill. They refused to vote. They voted against it on 2 occasions, which puts our country in danger and which makes the criminal activity, those who are involved in this type of activity, it probably has made them comfortable in this regard. So one of the things that we have to do is, as I've said, continue to educate and lift the quality of our people's consciousness on this issue, work towards providing more and more jobs, but at the same time, to cooperate with the rest of the international community to go after the money. This bill actually will give us, the main thing in this bill was to give us the power, the authority like the rest of the world has at the moment, that we will have the authority when a person is convicted for like drug trafficking or trafficking in persons, that we not only can jail them, but we can go after their property that they got from this the illegal activity and go after their money in that way. And in that way, going after the money is one of the ways that the international community thinks is very important in fighting against crime. And once we hit that, once we start doing that, that will bring down the rest of crime within the society, because a lot of those crimes are fueled by this type of drug trade. So we're going to do it at 2 levels. We're fighting it at a level of education, developing jobs, new opportunities, better paying jobs, and at the same time by strengthening our security forces to fight the criminal activities.
You know, Mr. President, my name is Richard. I'm just curious, what are your further intentions for high-tech jobs for the youths who are pursuing information technology in Guyana?
Well, that's an area that has huge possibilities. You know, I just came back from India, and while I was there in conversation with Prime Minister Modi, we agreed that we'll establish here in Guyana an ICT park, and this will more or less kind of be like a headquarters for the whole of South America and the Caribbean. And this has great possibilities in creating a lot of jobs. Right now, Qualfan is doing, right in the Eccles area, they're putting down a campus that will employ about 4,000 persons when it's at its maximum going there. So the ICT has huge possibilities in creating employment and allowing our people to have better paying jobs and better employment all over. And that is one of the reasons we had this one laptop for family program that we laid out. We have been able paying people to train them all over our country and opening the possibilities, creating the possibilities for them to have this job. Another important thing to note, when I prorogued the parliament, I did say that one of the reasons I prorogued the parliament was to talk to the opposition on some of these important bills, like the anti-money laundering bill. But in the parliament too is the liberalization of telecommunications bill that will allow us to have a possibility of creating more competition in this area, and that will make internet services and so forth much, much cheaper, and therefore we can help in the information and communication technology to provide much more possibilities for our young people. So you see why it is so important for us to win back the majority in the parliament, because we have had so much of obstacles placing the way than to get these things moving.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. I'm Peggy, a proud Amerindian to be here. I'm from Region 9. My question to you this afternoon is the hinterland is different very much from the coast economically. At present, the education curriculum is basically for youths on the coast. Is it possible that the government could develop a separate system for the youths in the hinterlands to introduce subjects like the art science, agriculture science, which would boost the economy in the Amerindian communities?
Yeah. Actually, another bill that is lying in the parliament that I also mentioned when I prorogued the parliament was the education bill. It's a bill to modernize our education and to take all of those things that you've said into consideration, for us to look at all of these different areas, the needs, and make our education system more relevant to the needs of the various communities that we have. We're doing some of that in practice. For instance, now we have managed to get the CXC people to agree that Portuguese will be one of the CXC examination, not from this year, but possibly from next year. Portuguese will be one of the subjects that we're writing. And you know that we border Brazil. Brazil is one of the largest economies in the world, and we think that we can have synergies with Brazil in that regard, in the areas where they operate. But I must say that I am very much pleased with some of the work that has been taking place in the Amerindian community. You know, they hardly had schools and proper schools when we were there. Now we have schools, nursery and primary schools in every single village in the Amerindian community in all the regions of our country. We provide free textbooks for our kids in school, free exercise books. We provide also, we build secondary schools now with dormitories, and we provide all the meals for our children to stay in school. That is why we have now, Guyana has the lowest dropout rates of kids from school in the Caribbean and the rest of South America. And we also have the highest enrollment rate in the whole of the Caribbean and South America as far as nursery education is concerned. That's a fantastic achievement for a small country like ours, of what we have done. So we have satisfied a lot of the social needs in the Amerindian community. We want to move towards helping the economy to work with the education system, as you mentioned, that we can look at the relevant skills that are needed. Right now, we want to start a technical institute in St. Ignatius. While we are waiting to build a building to have the technical institute, we want to use after-school hours at the St. Ignatius Secondary School to put in technical education in the afternoon so young people can go and get technical skills. We also have a lot of other programs. We just had a program by the Ministry of Labor, passing people from Camarang to Lethem to different areas where they're training young people. This was really directed at young people who dropped out of school previously, giving them education in mechanics, electrical work, in heavy-duty operators, and skills like that. And when they graduate, we give them tools so that they can be employable. Many of them we attach to companies, and a lot of them, the companies keep them when they're working. In the Amerindian community too, that is the focus that we're looking at, the areas where they have great possibilities in mining, education in mining, in forestry, in those kind of areas to develop the skills, furniture making, many other things that we can do, focus on, to bring the education level more relevant and to help them to have a better skill to survive in these difficult times. Unfortunately, the whole capital budget of the agriculture is very important in those areas too, and to add value to the agricultural products that they have. But the whole capital budget was cut by the opposition in this last parliament. And it is precisely when we put back that, based on the decision of the Chief Justice, that the opposition moved the no confidence motion in the National Assembly. So we have, all of these are plans, all the equipment that we help the village to improve the village economy, the tractors, the trailer, the plows, the transportation assistance, all of that, the solar panel assistance for the people in the interior, all of those things the opposition wanted to cut. And when we put them back into the budget, that's when they moved the no confidence motion. So yes, I agree with you. There is need to make the education system, and that's the direction we're going with the new bill tabled in the National Assembly, to make the education system more relevant to creation of jobs for our people, and to make our country more attractive to investors to come in and invest, so that we can create the employment possibility and move our country forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Oliver Simon. I'm from St. Kilgore's Mission. I'm 21 years old, so this election will be the first election that I will be able to vote in. Can you tell me why should I vote for you and the PPP government?
Because I'm confident that we have the best policy to deal with our youth. I am confident we have the best policy to deal with the development of our country as a whole. And you have seen over the last 3 years, over the last 5 years, how much we have been investing in the infrastructure to take our country forward. First, in the social infrastructure. In education, we spoke about that fairly extensively. In health, we built hospitals in every single region. We provide materials, try to equip them. I've just come back from Wakenham, an island in the Essequibo River. For the first time, they have a lab in the hospital that they can do a lot more of the work there. They have their many of the things that they didn't have before, and had to bring patients to Georgetown for. They can do it right there now. So we have a lot of those social facilities in the villages right across our country at this point in time. And at the same time, we're moving to improve the physical infrastructure. Like I talked about the hydropower that we want. They talk about the road from Linden to Lethem that will connect us to the rest of the continent, increase our trade with those countries. We're talking about a deep water harbor, again, that will help. We have to prepare for the future. Right now, the Panama Canal is being expanded. Bigger ships will be coming, smaller ships will be phased out. We will have to look at transportation with 30, 40, 50,000 ton ships instead of 10,000, 5,000 tons. And therefore, we have to have a deep water harbor to be ready to deal with that type of situation as they come. All of those things that we're putting in place that will create bigger employment for our people, higher paying jobs. And the policies that we have had, both at the level of economy, that has kept our economy growing. In the light of an international situation where from the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, when the world was gripped with a financial and economic crisis that impacted heavily on the Caribbean, Guyana is one of the few countries that have had continuous economic growth. Over the last 9 years, we have had continuous economic growth. That is the longest period of sustained economic growth in the living history, living memory of our people, which shows very clearly that we have good governance, good management of our economy in the light of an international atmosphere that is not so conducive, in the light of a situation in our country where we have an opposition that is obstructionist. I will say that we have done remarkably well. And with us winning back the majority in the National Assembly, our country can move at a much more rapid pace than the 4.5%, 5% growth rate. We can go to 7, 8, or even 10% growth per year. That is why I think it is important for young people to support the PPP Civic in this election so that we can take our country forward in a very rapid way to win, to be competitive, and our country can become even more attractive to people coming here to invest. Well, if you don't have any more questions, I want to take the opportunity to thank you very much for being here. It's very nice to have you here. It's always stimulating to have discussion with young people to try to have a better grasp. It's always more important to speak directly to young people, to hear their concerns. And I want to assure you that our encounter will help us greatly in crafting our manifesto and in going forward to make our country a better place. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
And that has brought us to the end of this week's edition of At Home with the President. I'm Juanita Huburn. We'll see you next time.